So QRadar sold its QRadar in the cloud assets to Palo Alto. Exabeam and Logarithm have merged, and there is more changes happening in the SIEM landscape. So if you are someone who is a SOC manager or a SOC administrator or a SOC analyst or a CISO looking to change their SIEM or security analytics setup, we are going right to the bottom of the affairs and speaking to Wasim Halani, who's the director of threat engineering at Securonix today. Hi, Wasim. Great to have you on the channel.
Hi, KK. It's been pleasure to join you on this podcast and look forward to our discussion ahead.
Great. So, Wasim, let's start by telling us what do you actually do at Securonix? What does a director of threat engineering do at Securonix?
Cool. So essentially, in a nutshell, I am responsible for all the out-of-the-box content that we provide to our customers on our Securonix SIM platform. Previously, this only was related to the analytical use cases that we call as policies and threat models. Recently, I have taken over the data part of the, you could say, data part of the platform as well, which means that I am now responsible also for the parsers, the mappings, the data dictionary that we call it, and also the categorization and dashboard and reports. Plus, I have also taken up the content delivery mechanism, which essentially we call as a content management service that allows us to deploy our out-of-the-box content from the central location to all our customers in different regions and in different tenants and MSSP subtenants as well. So I'm responsible for the whole life cycle of the content, creation, updation, and deprecation of the content as well. The high-level view of what I do at Securonix.
Is that like three teams or four teams working under you?
That's three teams now, about 20 members, and I've been with Securonix for about 3+ years now, almost nearing 4, I would say. And primary part of that was under the detection team, but recently I've taken over the additional 2 teams.
Awesome. I want to pause that conversation at this point and dial back to when you started your career, which was with us at Network Intelligence. And just remind me, did we hire you for the pen testing team or for our product team?
For the pen testing team, VAPT.
Pen testing team. Okay, cool. So can you just hark back to those days and tell us how you got started and how your career progressed from joining us?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey, honestly. Whenever I look back at it, I don't even realize how did I land up a job, because as a traditional, you could say, computer engineer, we always look for a campus placement. And then during those days, I did get a placement with Infosys, but for some XYZ reason, I was never interested to sit down and code forever for any random service that they decide and define. So during my engineering days itself, I was interested in cybersecurity. In fact, I had taken up my own learning and skill development and started building up my Nmap skills during those days. And I had taken up, I think it was Daniel Messer's course or something along those lines. I'm forgetting the name, but that essentially was my first hook into cybersecurity, and that got me passionate about it. And I started hunting for companies in Mumbai which deliver ethical hacking services for customers, right? And that's when I came up with network intelligence, and it was close to home, so that was a plus point. I applied, I got the interview. I remember vividly, you had conducted the interview round. The questions were not too many, but uh, I think probably you had asked me about my engineering projects and all. But yeah, once I landed up in office, it was a very small team, right? And looking back, I think we had a very small office with around 20 odd folks. And by the time I left network intelligence, we were a massive office, global spread. US, Middle East, obviously was very strong by that time, and India also we had multiple offices. So it's been an awesome journey overall, I would say. And the learnings was apart, right? That's a different part of the game, and that was itself its own journey. But yeah, at a personal level, that's the growth I've seen with network intelligence, and I'm happy to see where you guys are now moving, moving much more forward in terms of a global expansion, taking up new, I think, products and services delivery also. And it's great to see some of my old colleagues excelling well over there.
Great. And I actually also remember that interview because you told me that you were good at, or you said you solved the Rubik's cube as a hobby.
Yeah.
And for me, that was for some reason the convincing element because cybersecurity actually didn't even get called was called cybersecurity. It
Mhm,
was internet security or computer security or network security.
mhm,
So I was never keen to ask very in-depth technical questions to the folks we were hiring because people actually had never not studied for cybersecurity. So we were looking always for more fundamental knowledge and the thirst for more knowledge and the ability to learn and adapt. And so, but we never actually sat down and saw you solve a Rubik's cube. And I'm sure all the responsibility you have, the hobby that fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think for a decade or so, you grew through the ranks in terms of our pen testing, application security practice, and then you were heading that entire team, probably of about 100 plus people at that time.
Right.
And then you switched roles while with us. So tell us a little bit about that switch. You moved into a research and development role.
Mhm,
We tasked you with building out our own security analytics platform called
mhm.
Blue Scope. So tell us a little bit about that
Mm,
transition.
yeah, yeah, it is actually a very interesting transition because when I look back and I realize that when did I make the transition? It was pretty, I would say, natural progression in a manner because for the initial few years of my career, I was always about the offensive side of security, right? And somewhere along the lines, I got interested in identifying difficult problems, talked to the MSSP unit that we had during those days and realized we had certain challenges in the digital forensics, incident response, threat hunting. And in those days, threat hunting was just coming up as a formal, you could say, domain of service. And coincidentally, I chanced upon that Elastic Stack, which was very early days, but that was, I think, my pivot into the defensive side of cybersecurity, right? And the possibilities with Elastic were limitless because of the flexibility of the platform during those days and the open source when they were the original licensing, not later on when they moved the licensing. But during those days, the community was pretty vibrant. People had started using Elastic Stack for multiple use cases within cybersecurity as well. One of the topmost being to investigate and hunt for incidents post facto as part of the digital forensics and incident response programs. So I think that got me hooked into the defense side of cybersecurity. And the challenges kept on increasing gradually, and it became more exciting to solve those challenges because then you're not solving just a simple, you're not trying to attack just a simple application. Not to say offensive security is not difficult, it has its own challenges, but then you're looking at problems at a larger scale, and scale problems are engineering problems by its nature, right? So somewhere deep down, the engineer within me wanted to solve those kind of challenges as well. And as we progress along, we realize, okay, we don't need just GBs of data, we should be solving problems for TBs of data. And that's when we use that same platform to build out a service first for threat hunting, and then moved into making a full-fledged platform which we could deliver to our customers. So I think that journey itself was pretty interesting, moving through the entire technical range of cybersecurity over there.
Yeah, actually, I had forgotten about this. I recall now that our my thesis at that time was that the best offensive guys would make the best threat hunters because you guys knew how to
Hmm.
escalate privileges and exploit vulnerabilities and stay under the radar. So I felt that it's like put a thief to catch a thief, right?
Yeah,
And then I also remember when you brought in Elk. This is almost a decade back, I think, that we started
probably. Yeah,
Elk. We were blown away by the visualizations you could do in Kibana and
Kibana, right?
Power BI and all what wasn't around, and this was free. And we'd never seen security data appear so beautifully on screen and so easy to play out different visualizations, right? It was quite magical actually.
True.
Uh, but then at some stage we abandoned that attempt to build out that platform and bring it out as a product. We continued to use it for threat hunting and for compromise assessments, but we kind of abandoned that idea of building a successful product. Any lessons or memories you have from what we could have done differently, especially with your experience now with Securonix? And do you think we should have abandoned it, or do you think it was we should have persisted with building out that platform? This is again, we are talking about clearly pre-COVID, right? This was
Yeah.
you were building it out in 2019 uh, time frame.
True.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think COVID did play a part in making that decision, the difficult decision to kind of like move it into maintenance mode. But yeah, in terms of lessons learned, I would say one thing that I learned looking at the industry from the vendor side of things for the past 3-4 years is the project management element of this entire platform that were trying to build was kind of like missing. We were trying to solve too many problems because the customer was asking at that point of time, and we did not focus on that niche one or two problems that we wanted to solve, right?
Right.
So we try to cater the same platform to our MSSP. We try to cater the same platform for our enterprise customers, the same platform for our you could say threat hunting needs and customers over there, same for breach. So we were solving too many buckets of problems just using the same solution. So every you could say problem or every requirement was different, and its solutioning had to be customized to that customer. And that, I think, kind of like stretched us too thin in terms of making a pathway forward in identifying what is the exact pinpoint problem that we want to solve, which will deliver the max value for a customer. In PM terms, that's probably what they call as product market fit. And maybe we didn't get the sufficient time to identify that problem, because then COVID hit and we decided to take a step back. But probably if we had persevered more, I think we would have reached that stage where we would have identified, okay, this is not something that works for all environments. It is specific to a need or a requirement that customers have, right? And that should have helped us make a decision much more easier.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, even with all the other products that we attempted to develop and abandoned, the I think we were always missing the product development rigor or discipline.
Mhm.
We never really iterated to get to product market fit, right? We kept building what we thought was required, or every requirement that some customer threw over an email, and we said, yeah, sure, let's build out this
Mhm.
product to do solve that. We were all over the place.
Yeah, and I
We
think
never
early stage startups or early stage product development does go in that direction. But then you try to, at each stage, right, you try to identify where exactly is this taking you, right? And you pivot fast. Obviously, that is high in investment requirements, and it's not an easy journey. But I have seen products that pivot fast and are trying to deliver on that PMF quickly, will then get a sustained stream of customers. Once you have that, which always includes the you could say investment, further investment from customers, then you have paying customers, you have customers who believe in you. That's how you grow further, and then you scale. So
right.
that's an iterative process, and probably looking back, I think we, like you said, we were taking customer feedback as gospel truth and building on that itself, rather than trying to solve the problem, which is the ideal approach to solve it.
Yeah. In fact, with the Transilience now, we're doing things very differently. We're working much more closely with customers,
Mm-hmm.
iterating over different features and versions, and I think spending a decent amount of time getting to PMF and not rushing to market with, a platform and trying to sign up customers too soon,
Mm-hmm.
or scrolling our feature set or trying to solve multiple aspects of the problem. So, for example, the broad idea we have with Transilience is to build an AI powered platform
Mm-hmm.
that essentially automates much of L2, L3 security tasks, be it in any domain of security, GRC, threat intelligence, incident response, vulnerability management, etc. But we're starting with a very, very specific problem of using um, LLMs to help prioritize vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
because you and I have worked with large organizations that are holding 70, 80, 90, 100,000 vulnerabilities in an Excel sheet.
Right.
And it just keeps going back and forth. And 10,000 vulnerabilities get fixed in one cycle, then the next scan runs. And so you keep going endlessly into that loop. So, and again, both you and I work with clients to funnel that 70, 80,000 down to 100 vulnerabilities that really need to be fixed now because there's exposure and, this is an exploitable issue and this is an asset exposed to the internet, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This whole thing we are looking to automate with Transilience, and then we'll move on to the other parts. So it's an interesting space to be in. Though we are building out small utilities, and our teams are loving those utilities that we are building. So we built a small one for the GRC team that
Mhm.
automates policy creation and checklist creation,
Okay.
and now to build an evidence validation. We built one for threat modeling, upload the LLD or the HLD of your app, and then it does a stride and trade model analysis on that.
Mhm.
So not all utilities we are building out, but the main focus of Transilience now is for vulnerability prioritization. But there's a lot of back and forth with customers, a lot of talking to a select set of customers, and
Mhm.
and even earlier with our earlier attempts, we never had the concept of a design partner.
Yeah.
Uh, so those kinds of elements, we are making sure we do it the right way with Transilience.
That's great. In fact, these ideas are pretty good, because you mentioned you want to kind of like alleviate the L2, L3 problems. And I think LLMs, at least the general models that are available freely, are quite decent. If you can figure out any hallucinations and all those aspects, they're quite decent in becoming a personal assistant or an extra team member in your organization. So if what you're building helps reduce the headcount by just adding a new agent into the system, that I think is something very promising overall.
Right. And then, one of our moats is the 20 plus years of pen testing reports and vulnerability reports and audit reports, etc. So there is all of that intelligence also that we are
Hmm.
um, customize the model and make the agents smarter. But anyway, back to threat engineering and Securonix.
Hmm.
So, Wasim, if you had to give advice to a SOC manager or a SOC administrator in terms of reducing alert fatigue, which is still very prevalent in spite of all the efforts
Hmm.
that folks like you and I are putting in. Alert fatigue is still very much a realistic problem. So, what advice would you give in terms of how do you go about addressing alert fatigue within an enterprise?
Yeah. So the reason even after so many years it's not solved is because it's a difficult problem, and secondly, it's a challenge where you're racing against time, uh, and you don't have the necessary bandwidth to sit down and think over it a bit, right? Um, One aspect that we need to always consider is that the data that you send into the platform is your starting point for those alerts. We look at
Right.
just the detection as the starting point, but the more amount of data sources you add, the bad data that you add, this is something that Anton Chuvak and I remember had mentioned this long back. uh, Garbage in will give you garbage out. That's essentially fundamental, that if you send in bad data, it could be bad data sources, irrelevant data sources, it will trigger a lot of noise for environment, which you will not know what to do, right? So the way I look at it, you start with your data, decide which data requires an alert to be triggered on it, and then you move forward to moving that to your analytics pipeline. So data sources play a big role in that, what information those data sources provide you. So all of that review has to be done. Now, once you are into the system, there has to be a level of prioritization that occurs. There has to be a level of tuning that occurs. I see many customers who are averse, or MSSPs who are averse to tuning their violations or their alerts in their environment. One is because it's time consuming, it deviates from their regular BAU or operational activities. But second is they're afraid of missing out on alerts. But then the opposite side of the spectrum is that you're getting too many alerts that you cannot even process. So
Right.
irrespective of the fact that you get too many alerts, or you get you're missing out on alerts, you are effectively, because of the volume of alerts, you're missing out on those true incidents that are anyways there.
Correct.
So the goal has to be periodic review of the rules, periodic review of the whitelist that we do, so that we don't end up permanently whitelisting a bad solution. Then there are multiple ways where you can improve the triage itself, the process. So people think that adding a new solution into the system or into your organization will help solve the alert triage or sorry, alert fatigue issue. It is not necessarily only the technology, it is your people and your processes as well, because those are the people who are going to finally triage and solve the problem for you, right? The fatigue is at the human level. The platform doesn't have a fatigue, right? They can process as you tell them to process. So we need to fix the people part, the process part, prioritizing which alerts need to be actioned upon, which alerts are just signal. They might not be noise per se, but if you consider every alert as a actionable item, you're in for a failure. Rather, I would suggest to decide looking at the alerts, right? Which of them can be tuned, which of them need to just be aware of, which of them can be ignored because independently they are not malicious, they might be abnormal. Not every abnormality or any activity in the system is malicious in nature, but together too many abnormal activities associated with a user can indicate something suspicious, so that they need to be investigated. So if your platform provides it, you need to stitch together all of these abnormal events together and then decide, yes, this is a higher priority for me and I need to focus on this. Because what happens is there might be 10 low rated alerts in your system, but when you stitch together, that low rated will become a high rated incident or an alert for you. So there has to be some local, could say, alert prioritization mechanism that you have to do in your environment, right? Suppression with relation to making sure that after a certain threshold, you know that, okay, you have an activity going on in your environment. If it's a valid activity, you suppress it beforehand, so it doesn't necessarily go to your SOC teams to monitor, which is a redundant activity. But if it's an unknown activity and you know that these kind of activities generate a lot of noise, you can decide to suppress it after 100 alerts, so that that same incident, that same alert does at 100 count does not add value when you have the same incident running for 1000 alerts. So you add a suppression saying that, okay, if it runs for the same duration within 1 hour, add a suppression rule. This will reduce your overall noise that lands up in the analyst bucket, because the issue with alert fatigue is that once the analyst tries to internally baseline these alert volumes and types of alerts, then it becomes a dangerous issue for you, because what will happen is in the future also they might see an alert which is low rated, but it might be something that they need to investigate, but subconsciously they have learned that this can be ignored. And that is the problem with alert fatigue. It is that mental issue that they have in terms of not being able to process too many volumes of alerts that has to be solved. So yeah, prioritization is an item, tuning is an item, data is an item, right? And then process and people is what organization need to look at MSSP level. Probably one item that I see is MSSPs try to keep their rules very generic in nature, and they try to avoid any tuning specific to their subtenants or customers. Now that's a
Right.
problem in its own self, right? Because what happens is, who bears the brunt of all of these alerts is the end customer. They are given all of these saying that we have triggered all of these alerts for you. Please let us know what is good or bad. But what the customer might probably not be seeing is that these are generic rules that are not fine-tuned to their environment. This is not always the case, obviously. There are some very good MSSPs that provide a catered solution to each customer. But then there are some others who prefer to have a generic rule, maintain it across all of their platforms, and then give a generic alert to the customer, let them decide which is good or bad. Again, that does not help, right? Every customer environment is different, every enterprise is different, every small medium organization is different. So the alerts have to be tuned as per their requirements and their environment, right? And that goes over a period of time. You cannot expect that the first day I deploy a rule, you will have that being in production and then every alert has to be validated. So the way we have an onboarding process, that maybe for the first month or so there are 10 data sources to be onboarded, there has to be a cycle or a period where it's like a gestating period or a warming period where you deploy the rule, you monitor it in a sandbox, and then you finally decide that this rule goes to production or I need to further fine tune it, and again you review it during that next sandbox window, and then again you try to decide, make that decision. So like I said, going back, process is very important over here to reduce that alert fatigue.
Yeah. From an MSSP perspective, I can tell you that it's basically a question of cost.
Hmm.
If I have to sit and fine tune my use cases across each and every one of my 40, 50 customers, I would be happy to do that. But none of them will pay me for it. Though again, a SOAR is extremely beneficial for us at this stage. You know,
Hmm.
we've managed to automate over 90% of our activities. So a lot of automation we brought in from the SOAR, and that frees up the analyst time to actually do analysis.
Hmm.
Otherwise, also what happens is there's SLA pressure, because we have to create a ticket for a P1 incident within 30 minutes. You know, that's the window that the analyst has to actually do really useful analysis.
Correct.
Um, Same analyst is also looking at, dozens of P2, P3 incidents in the same 30-hour window, then they're basically not going to be able to do that analysis and
Yeah.
correlation.
So that's why, if you remember, the first statement I made was they don't have the time. Somebody needs to sit and look at what the data says, right? So
Yes.
obviously, it cannot be the analyst, but they can give feeders, and there has to be a feedback loop. Probably the SOC manager can lead that initiative where they take feedback from the analyst that, okay, which are the top 5 alerts you're seeing, which is not adding value to your monitoring needs, and then they take that back to the detection team. They tune it, and then kind of like the cyclic review of it every month or every quarter.
Yeah, so there are two challenges that we have seen on the ground with that. One is that you definitely need the IT and the application teams to cooperate. They have to give a lot of feedback over there as well. For example, multiple failed logins we might see on given user IDs. Um, we and on the security side cannot always conclude whether that's a real incident or it's just some script that's failing or
Hmm.
some new system that was introduced, etc. So this process of taking alerts every month, kind of triaging them holistically, requires a lot of feedback from IT teams as well. The other is it requires fairly cross-domain knowledge.
Hmm.
You have to understand networks and applications and firewalls and proxies and DNS and so that skill set to do this is we. So one of the things that we do at our end for our enterprise customers, we have a number of SOC KPIs, and one of the key KPIs is the alert to incident ratio.
Hmm.
And this is an exercise in which even I have gotten involved at times where we sit with all the tickets created, go back to the alerts, sit with the IT teams, and that really helps build the bridge and buy-in from technology to
Hmm.
actually go and address those tickets and mitigate and remediate those incidents. But yeah, clearly from hearing you, more security tools is not the answer. It's only adding to the noise. And it requires more effort from the security teams to kind of fine tune those alerts and bring more method to the madness.
True.
Um, One piece which I also wanted to talk to you about was um, I understand that you also look into the threat intel platform and the threat intel aggregation piece. So, for a customer looking to invest in a threat intelligence platform or threat intelligence feed, what would you advise them? What should they be looking out for? Should they have open source only? Should they use open source and commercial? Commercial. What are your general top three, four tips on the threat intel side of the shop?
See, it depends primarily on the maturity of the cybersecurity function or threat detection function in the customer's organization over there. Because for many customers, threat intel simply means IOCs. For opposite side of the spectrum, you have companies who really invest in threat intel, who are monitoring threats relevant to them on a, let's say, day-to-day basis. Those are a different ball game. So it depends on the needs. It's not a clear cut answer, but at a bare minimum, at a platform level, I would say that, okay, every organization should have some sort of a IOC feed coming in, which obviously should age out so it doesn't create noise. But those IOC feeds should be good quality, or at least they should be graded to avoid the same alert fatigue issue, right? I don't want the random noise on the internet of ping sweeps and port scan just cluttering my alert, I could say, queue. So there has to be some intel that goes into the platform that will also allow us to tune out or prioritize the alerts that come in. If it's coming in from a generic known port sweep, I would deprioritize that alert. If it's coming from a commercial third-party vendor which is providing me the top quality feed, they always give a you could say a confidence score or a rating to their alert IOCs. If that's the case, then I would probably triage that first, then all the other threats that I'm seeing. Right now, the other part of this is that beyond this a feed, do I need the intel behind that feed also, right? The context, who are the actors behind it, what geographical locations they target, or what are the types of organizations they target. That depends on the maturity of the org and if it's relevant to them as part of their threat perception, their risk that they're willing to take. Right, so not every organization requires a full-fledged threat management, threat intel management platform or the threat platform. They
Hmm.
need the IOCs, but beyond that, they can evaluate based on their needs whether they want the full gamut of solution or just the intel.
So you're saying one is most definitely commercial feed is important. When we started our SOC, we were open source,
Hmm.
and then we became QRadar partners and got the X-Force, and now we have Palo Alto partners and Unit 42, etc. So obviously, yeah, that's a graded scale of maturity. So start with open source, and then if you can get the commercial threat intel feed coming in, then that's great. Start off again with open source threat intel aggregation platforms, and then see if your SOAR or SIM provider has a tip. Then maybe start doing that and integrate that with the rest of your technology, right? Whether it's firewalls or SOAR or SIM, whatever you have integrated into those platforms.
Right. In
Uh,
fact, that's an interesting point, right? Not all threat intel needs to come to my SIM as well, right? If
right.
I can I cannot do much of an action on many of the threat intel because like there's a port scan that's happening on my perimeter. The best I can do is just block the IP, but how many IPs do I block, right? So there's a approach that you could take where you decide what will I do with this threat intel. If it's a hash, then I act differently. If it's an IP address, I act differently. If it's a proxy, I act differently. So you basically tie in that threat intel, or you give it to the devices in your infra which will do the action, or you use SOAR to act on that threat intel afterwards, right? So if the SIM raises an alert which matches your threat intel, then you go to the respective either proxy or the firewall, block that IP or the domain over there.
Great. Wasim, couple of last questions before I let you go. Um, with all this news of the SIM marketplace changes, many of our customers, we ourselves are looking to evaluate alternatives to QRadar. Obviously, you're not here to make a pitch for Securonix, but let's talk generically. What would be the key parameters or key features or key decision points for an organization, MSSP, or end customer looking to move to a new security analytics platform? Top three, four, five features that you would recommend.
Okay. So I would say for an MSSP, one clear-cut deciding factor is what is the nature of that MSSP tenancy model that any vendor provides, right? Not every vendor has that in-house, or you could say native capability for MSSP, you could say models.
Fancy, right?
So yeah, so that's a very clear-cut demarcation for the customers over there. But the other
Hmm.
pieces is uh, nowadays on-prem is more or less not being preferred, right? Customers are preferring cloud because of the scale of data. uh, do you own control of the data? Can you do extra analytics on that data is one interesting factor that some of the mature organizations you could say use that as a deciding factor. But I would say at a general scale, what you should probably evaluate is how good are the detections, what analytical types the platform provides, what capabilities of customization the platform provides, because you can have a platform that is very rigid in its analytics and it only serves 10 use cases that you can build, or you have a platform that is flexible enough that can give you those 10, but if you are mature enough in your development of analytics and detections, you can expand that to 50 or 100 odd cases. So the capability to customize your detections, the capability to modify or tweak your you could say thresholds is important. Then also the ability to add more and more context to your data, right? How much well integrated is it with other platforms? Can I pull my HR data into the system? Can I pull my active directory data into the system and then enrich my data over there or not? So those are in very bare minimum factors. In fact, what I'm referring to is essentially what any traditional SIM should do. But not all of them have that maturity or that capability to build upon these bare minimum capabilities, right? So they restrict the customers to just saying that you can do X, Y, and Z, but only with our product platform. So those are challenges. The third is if you are at a scale, right, meaning you are a very large enterprise, then the game becomes a different challenge. You're talking not only about the features of the platform, but also the ability of the platform to scale, right? We have seen customers go to 700k to 1 million k EPS, and it becomes very challenging over there, because when you're expecting near real time alert, any drop in data or any lag in the system will effectively delay your alerts to a significant level. So the ability to scale is very significant, especially for these large enterprises. And also, one item that is becoming very, could say, common nowadays is what you would say is the integrated automation or integrated SOAR. Because SOAR as a platform, even Gartner is telling it's kind of like dying or dead right now. So most of these platforms are merged or merging within the traditional SIM ecosystem that you would call it, right?
Hmm.
So the automation within the SIM helps a lot, because that allows you, with the same topic we spoke about earlier on alert fatigue, plus also allows you to do a lot of small micro playbooks and automations that you have. The other point for consideration is you could say the storage and access to that storage. For how long can you search the data? Because with threat hunting becoming common stream, it is necessary that organization have access to a long-term search of your data. Another emerging point I would say that helps with the evaluation goes to the first point that we spoke about, the data, right? Not all data is equal, and customers are starting to realize this. They have different needs for different data types, meaning some data is only relevant for your compliance purposes, some data is relevant for your hunting purposes, some data is only relevant for just storing and visualization, some is relevant for your analytics. So each data requires a different type of handling that is needed. So the
Right.
industry is emerging with something that they call as the data fabric or data pipelines. The idea is that you, at the start of your, you could say, journey within bringing data in, you ensure that you define what is the landing destination of the data. Plus, you curate the data, or you basically add filters, manipulations on the data, which will allow you to decide that, okay, do I want to aggregate this data? Do I want to, could say, remove a certain fields so that it helps reduce my storage and my EPS count also? So a lot of those capabilities are now expected in the platform natively, and customers are looking for these features because these are becoming table stakes very soon. It's not yet in the full-fledged all the platforms today, but many of them have some capabilities. We ourselves are building this capabilities and delivered it for a few customers. So I know that this is going to be default ask from all customers, at least for large enterprise, very soon. And I would say last is the utilization of AI within the platform itself. Machine learning, anomaly detection, behavioral baselining, all these are, you could say, no compromises features that are needed in the system. But
Right.
beyond that, customers have an ask, okay, what extra do we have a flavor for AI on top of this, right? AI is not yet a, you could say, sorted out, you could say, use case within cybersecurity. But I don't want to dismiss AI because it has a lot of micro use cases that deliver lot of value. Like you mentioned, right? That same L2, L3 use case that you mentioned, it has a pre-knowledge of what you have done for over the last 20 years. If you
Right.
can train it on that data, you can deliver some coherent output, which is similar to what your consultant will deliver today. Same is the case with cybersecurity, right? You have a lot of volume of data. You can use AI to generate a summary of your incident. You can use AI to help you triage the next steps. You can use AI to help you build a first draft of your detection logic. You can use AI to help build better parsers. There are many such small use cases, and customers are wanting to see what flavor of those use cases you have within your platform, right? Because
Right.
it effectively helps reduce their headcounts or their operational costs on a regular basis. The more efficiency you drive within the platform is what will help deliver long-term ROI for customers. If you are not going to give customers let's say ability to reduce their license cost, to reduce their headcount, to optimize their processes, then you are effectively just playing the game where you want to increase your revenue without helping the customer solve a problem. So it has to be a two-way street where you are delivering value and also helping customers reduce the cost.
Very true. I am 100% in agreement with you that AI is still to be proven in terms of the specific use cases, the specific value that gets delivered. I mean, it's easy to slap on a Gen AI wrapper, right? And offer a co-pilot capability within a product. I mean, that is pretty much a no-brainer. But beyond that, which is to actually build out AI-powered vertical LLMs agents that can do much of what L2, L3 engineers today do. That's, I think, the real holy grail.
So just to highlight one, okay, this is probably something that I'm mentioning about the product, but we have a use case where we are using AI to help customers solve the alert fatigue issue also, right? We have a model which will tell us which of these policies that we have within the system are noisy, but noisy due to a periodicity noise, meaning they are like a policy that triggers significantly on a Thursday because there is some background activity that is happening, and it shows you that this policy has a weekly frequency. It triggers usually high on a Thursday. Now, it's not easy to do this at scale again. So we use ML AI over there, or policies that are correlated to each other, meaning if one policy is triggering, the second policy usually always triggers. So there's a
Hmm.
high correlation factor over there. So these kind of use cases actually deliver value for customers, help them bring down the noise, overall reduce the alert fatigue, and effectively you see the value long term also.
Very true. Very true. Awesome. Wasim, one final question for you, and it's been a very insightful chat, by the way. I made a page of notes
Thank you.
from you. What lies in the future for you and your team at Securonix? What's on? And again, I am aware that you would be not able to reveal any product roadmap features, but generally, what are you looking forward to?
Mhm. So, in terms of the organization, I would say, like I mentioned, AI and data, those are core areas that we want to focus on because they are the most uh, impactful in delivering value to customers, right? The very large customers that we have, they want to be able to send more data, but they also want to make sure that their license costs don't explode. So the data fabric, noise cancellation that we mentioned about, those are very new, exciting features that we are developing and are in early stages of release. Uh, that also ties into my nature of work because our content is given out of the box to our customers, right? If I am able to use my own platform and deliver, you could say, higher fidelity policies and content to customers, it is
Right.
you could say, a good feedback loop for me. So I would say these features will help deliver, make my work also easier, right? And overall, in terms of detection engineering as a domain, I think it's a very dynamic domain. It's difficult, but we are looking to automate a lot of these functions. How do you automate, optimize, and make the process efficient so that you're able to deliver better content for customers while reducing your delivery time, making sure the quality is high, good in nature. So these are challenging problems because threats are not reducing. They
Hmm.
are increasing day by day. You need to keep up pace with that, but you also need to make sure that you're not just dumping unnecessary policies to customers, because end of the day, there'll be a chunk of customers who know what policies they want, but there'll also be a very large chunk of customers who want the definition of what policies should be enabled in their environment coming from us. They depend on us for the value, right? So for such customers, if I'm able to deliver just the pinpoints policies that they need to use on their platform, that's the exciting factor that I would want to look towards too.
Awesome. It's a very substantial, meaty set of problems to solve. I am sure you and the team are very excited about it.
Certainly.
Lovely. Thank you, Wasim. Thank you so much for all your inputs.
Thanks a lot, KK, for having me on this podcast.
Thank you.